I'm thrilled to present our next speaker. She's been kind enough to join us again tonight, and that's Harley McDonald-Eckersall. Harley brings 8 years of experience as an activist and organizer for Animals to Farm Transparency Project. At age 19, Harley co-founded the organization Young Voices for Animals with a mission to educate and inspire the next generation of animal liberation activists. With YVA, Harley delivered a groundbreaking education program to empower high school students to take actions for animals, as well as coordinating Australia's first youth animal rights conference. After taking part in her first direct action during the Dominion Anniversary Day of Action in April 2019, Harley moved to the UK to work on messaging and strategy for animal rebellion. It was here she gained experience executing large-scale acts of civil disobedience, including blockades at McDonald's 4 UK distribution centres, costing the company millions of dollars and affecting their national supply chain. Bravo, Harley. And tonight, Harley is speaking about Farm Transparency's project's latest campaigns. So welcome, Harley, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Am I able to share my screen? That's
yes.
Beautiful. Okay, here we go. Can everyone see?
Yep, perfectly.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. Yeah, lovely to see you all. I'm Harley. I'm the Strategy and Campaigns Director at Farm Transparency Project, which is basically a fancy way of saying I organize and control a lot of spreadsheets and our calendar and kind of work on the campaigns that we're running and figuring out what we're doing at any given time. So before I start, I just want to acknowledge that I am doing this presentation on the unceded land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So I think most people here will be familiar with Farm Transparency Project and our work. For anyone who's not, we're a nonprofit animal rights organization. Our focus is on investigating and exposing commercial animal abuse, so in farms and slaughterhouses. We're the organization behind the film Dominion. We have, well, Chris, I know, is somewhere floating around in this presentation as well. So hi, Chris. He is the founder and director of Farm Transparency Project, as well as the director and writer of Dominion. But as well as Dominion, we have spent the last 10 years, it's our 10-year anniversary this year, actually, of Farm Transparency Project, documenting and exposing commercial animal use in Australia. So factory farms, slaughterhouses, and all the varied ways which humans use and exploit other species. So tonight I'm going to be going over some of our main campaigns at the moment and what's been happening with them and some updates. As I was making this presentation, I realized how much we've actually done since the start of the year. So I'm going to speed through things as much as possible and try and get through as much as I can, because there's been a lot happening. So I'm going to start with our campaign to ban gas chambers. So as a lot of you know, last year we conducted an investigation at Victoria's 3 largest pig slaughterhouses, where we filmed using mainly hidden cameras the gassing of pigs. We also left Chris inside one of those chambers where he filmed with a handheld camera the slaughter of those pigs. That footage led to really extensive media coverage, starting with an exclusive report on ABC's 7:30, and initiated a Victorian parliamentary inquiry into pig welfare, which has been happening over the last few months. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. So the Ban Gas Chambers campaign has been a big focus of ours over the last year and a bit. And I'm going to start by talking a little bit about an event we ran last year. So in November last year, we ran an all-night vigil outside Victoria's largest pig slaughterhouse, Diamond Valley Pork. So we set up camp outside. We built a memorial, we had speeches and music throughout the night. And because of that event, which was public and it was open, even though it wasn't a disruptive event in the way that it didn't kind of stop the facility from operating, Diamond Valley Pork decided to close down for the day. So no pigs were brought in and no pigs were slaughtered the following morning when we were still there. So for us, that was a really great example of how scared these places are of us as a movement, and how much power we can have, even just like showing up and running these events. So that was a really fantastic event. There was about 30 to 50 of us there throughout the night. We had dinner, we had great speeches and all that, and it was a really fantastic opportunity to see how us coming together for this overnight thing made this multi-million-dollar corporation shut down without even really having to do much from us. So I'm not going to play this video, but in the lead up to the Victorian inquiry into pig welfare, our teams of investigators were working on getting more footage to show the reality of Australian pig farming, and what they captured, as well as routine practices used in piggeries across Victoria and across Australia, such as the killing of piglets via blunt force trauma, and the mutilation of newborn piglets, such as cutting their ears and cutting off their tails with scissors. They also accidentally uncovered the horrific rape of a female pig by a male worker at a Victorian facility. So this horrible act led to a report at 7:30. It led to a police investigation and the arrest of a man who has been charged with this act. And it also led to this report showing the other footage that was captured. So these standard practices, such as piglet thumping and tail docking and teeth clipping. So these are the things that we know that happen every day in Australian piggeries. So this was released the day before the hearings for the Victorian inquiry into pig welfare. So the inquiry was, it's going to stop playing, sorry. The inquiry was started by Georgie Purcell after our investigation into pig gas chambers, and it was open for public consultation, and over 10,000 people contributed to that, which was fantastic. They gave us a really short time frame over Christmas to get public submissions in, but despite that, over 10,000 people contributed, most of them in support of increases to protections for pigs in Australian pig farms and slaughterhouses. So this, as well as this report, we also released a new campaign called The Price of Pork, where we started to publish investigations into, sorry, I think someone's off mute. Started to publish investigations into these pig farms, which started with this one, Midland Bacon, where this horrific act and this abuse of a pig who was called Olivia was uncovered. So the day after that story came out, Chris and I both presented at the public hearings for the inquiry into pig welfare. What happened during those hearings was that I think it was 3 of the MPs chose to walk out rather than watch the footage that Chris and I were playing as part of our giving evidence. Despite that, we were still able to give evidence, and we talked about the work of our organization and what we've uncovered over the last decade, but also specifically over the last 2 years, including the ongoing use of sow stalls, which Farm Transparency Project revealed in 2022 in Victoria, the use of gas chambers in pig slaughterhouses in Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia, which we investigated and exposed last year, and these routine mutilations that we exposed in a Victorian pig farm this year. So we gave evidence alongside some other fantastic animal groups in Australia, including Animal Liberation, and including sanctuaries such as Edgar's Mission. And I think anyone who watched the public hearings and who watched the public hearings the next day, which was where the industry were being questioned compared to our day, would say, I think, that it was pretty clear who was more compelling. It's hard to compare Pam Ahern from Edgar's Mission talking about the individuality of pigs with the director, one of the directors of APL, Australian Pork Limited, who said very confidently that pigs don't like being outside, that some breeds of pigs don't like being outside. So that was a fantastic opportunity to speak to this parliamentary inquiry, and also to show this footage and to show the reality of how pigs are treated in these places. So following the inquiry and following the release of the footage of Olivia, some of our volunteers launched a petition to free this sow, Olivia, from the piggery. So the petition very quickly got thousands of signatures from all over the world calling on the piggery, Midland Bacon, to release Olivia into the care of a sanctuary. We staged a protest out the front of the piggery, and we were told that Olivia had been moved to another location, an undisclosed location. Following that, we have done all that we can to try and find her location, including sending out thousands of leaflets to letterboxes in the suburbs surrounding the piggery, and continuing to build the momentum of the piggery of the petition. We haven't found her, unfortunately, but I think we've really built a fantastic community around this campaign, not just calling for justice for Olivia, but calling for justice for all pigs who are confined on piggeries. Not only as well, a lot of the time we'll talk about sows and the horrific use of sow stalls and farrowing crates, but we also had the chance to talk about how pigs are raised in piggeries to be killed and sent to slaughter. On top of that, we launched brand new virtual tours. So what these are, and we have quite a few of them now, are completely interactive virtual tours inside inside 2 Victorian piggeries now, I believe, as well as some slaughterhouses in Tasmania and Victoria. So these were created using 360 cameras, and they're actually 360 video inside these piggeries. So what you can do is, using your laptop or desktop or even your phone, or using a virtual reality headset, you can actually kind of be dropped in the middle of this piggery, and you can use your mouse or your controllers to navigate around and see real 360 video, so you can see it from all angles. We've used these already in outreach to kind of allow people to experience what it's really like inside one of these places. A lot of the time, I'm sure as advocates, you'll have experienced this, people saying, oh, well, that footage is edited, or that's not how it's actually like. The fantastic bonus of this form of outreach is that no one can say that this footage has been edited or manipulated in any way, because it's completely immersive. It's exactly how it was when we set up that camera, and people can look around and explore on their own. So these tours are available on our website, and we really encourage people to use them in their own outreach, as well as any of our footage or photos or anything like that. So one thing that came up during the hearing and the inquiry into pig welfare was there was a an evidence presentation or submission from two pork producers. This is David Wright. He was the director of the Pig Council division of the Victorian Farmers Federation. So he was basically representing pig farmers in the Victorian Farmers Federation. He spoke at the inquiry alongside his buddy Tim there, and they spoke about, you know, the Victorian pig industry's commitment to animal welfare and how their farms, practices on their farms were world leading. So in response to that, we decided to investigate David Wright's pig farm, which we did, and which we released quite recently. As many of you can imagine, what he said during the inquiry was very far from the truth. He talked a lot about activists and investigators like terrorizing farmers at their homes. As you can see, David Wright's pig farm doesn't even have a house on it. In fact, the nearest property with a house on it is 2 kilometers away, which is a dairy farm, nothing to do with David Wright's piggery. David Wright continues to use devices which are not technically sow stalls. He is APIC approved, which means that he does not use sow stalls apparently, but he confines sows in cages which are remarkably similar to sow stalls for over a week for the purpose of artificial insemination, as well as just keeping them there for a long time. While we were there, we exposed really horrific things, the rotting bodies of pigs and piglets, sows with horrific pressure sores from being confined to these mating stalls and farrowing crates for weeks or days or weeks at a time, and like many species living on that farm, including cats, rats, maggots, birds, all living inside these sheds, which are, as the pig industry claims, biosecure. We also rescued who we thought was a little kitten, but who turned out to be quite an old cat, but who was just so malnourished and ravaged by illness and parasites that she was about the size of a 3-month-old kitten, and she now lives with Chris. So that investigation kind of really shone a light onto the David Wright and to the claims that were made during the inquiry. And the last thing we heard was that David Wright has stepped down from his position as president. We're not sure how permanent that will be. I really need to speed through. There's some photos from the investigation into David Wright's piggery. So this was the man who was elected to represent the pig industry by his peers. So the report from the Pig Welfare Inquiry has recently come out, and it contains a number of really promising recommendations, including investigations into alternative for CO2 pig gassing, and on the spot, new guidelines, on the spot checks, and mandatory CCTV. So we'll be pushing the Victorian government to implement these recommendations in full. And definitely keep an eye on our social media, because over the next week or two, we'll be launching some ways people can help out with that. So we'll be launching a petition to push for the Victorian government to respond to these recommendations. They have 6 months to respond. I just want to briefly mention, this isn't something we're working on, but the amazing team at Animals Australia is actually suing PrimeSafe, the Victorian slaughterhouse regulator, and one of the slaughterhouses we exposed last year, Benalla, for essentially kind of bringing forward the legal case that the gassing of pigs is actually illegal according to federal legislation, and that it should never have been allowed. So that's a really exciting case, incredibly groundbreaking, and the next hearing for that is late July. So we're really excited to see where that goes, and the fact that this is even going to court is amazing. So our second main campaign is shut down slaughterhouses. So last year, after exposing the pig slaughterhouses, we went to South Australia and exposed 3 slaughterhouses there with the aim of kind of showing the other methods of pig slaughter and how horrible they are as well. While we were there, we just uncovered some of the worst animal abuse we've ever seen, including entirely illegal slaughterhouse operating in Snowtown, South Australia. And it kind of motivated us to launch this campaign where we pledged to expose 30 slaughterhouses over 2 years to really show that these examples of cruelty and abuse are not one-off, they're not isolated instances, it is systemic. So last year we exposed 12 slaughterhouses, including 5 in Tasmania, which led to really massive media coverage and the government implementing mandatory CCTV in slaughterhouses across Tasmania. So earlier this year, we held a vigil outside one of the slaughterhouses we exposed, Cressy, where dozens of calves were being killed while fully conscious. And that's Tasmanian Quality Meat Slaughterhouse. And yeah, we've recently learned that the mandatory CCTV will be happening. As we all know, mandatory CCTV doesn't do much, but what it can do is allow us to continue to push that even when these places have CCTV, they're still committing these horrific acts. And if independently monitored, it can mean that these places are under more scrutiny. So this year, in the first few months of this year, we released 4 new slaughterhouses: Gather Coles in Wangaratta, Gippsland Meat in Bairnsdale, Summerland Poultry in Kellyville, New South Wales, and Ralph's Meat in Seymour, Victoria. So Gather Coles is a very large slaughterhouse killing cows, sheep, pigs, and goats. Gippsland Meat and Summerland Poultry both kill rabbits. So by releasing that, we captured and exposed the Australian first footage of commercial rabbit slaughter, and have been kind of working and pushing with the Animal Justice Party to end the rabbit farming and slaughter industry in Victoria and in Australia. I'm going to really rush through what I have as I know I'm running out of time, but I'll do my best. We also exposed Ralph Meats and got kind of developed some actions out of that. This is a Victorian slaughterhouse where cows were being killed, again, while fully conscious or regaining consciousness on the kill floor. So this led to investigation by the Department of Agriculture, and we held several actions outside the slaughterhouse and also at the slaughterhouses. They have their own little stall at the South Melbourne market, so we held an action outside their stall. This is a screenshot from a 7 News report. So in May, on May 17th, we exposed our 17th slaughterhouse, Yurubin Game Meats in Yurubin, Victoria. This aired with an exclusive report on 7 Border News. Half an hour after this aired, Chris and I received an email from the lawyers acting on behalf of the slaughterhouse, basically saying that they'd asked for from the courts an urgent injunction, which meant that we had to either take the footage down or risk going to prison. So we're currently fighting this in court, and our hearing is in August, starting August 5th. So yeah, we really appreciate all the support that the community, the animal rights community, has shown us in this. It's a really groundbreaking case, challenging, it's Victoria's first ag-gag case, and it's challenging the rights of investigators to publish footage of animal cruelty. What we uncovered at Yurubin, we've published written descriptions of it, but it was, you know, it's both horrific and standard for Australian slaughterhouses. Animals still conscious after having their throats slit, baby goats being slaughtered, and then baby goats being electrocuted and then left for hours while partially paralyzed but still conscious and crying out for help. Just horrific things, and the slaughterhouse is clearly terrified that these images and video will make it to the public. So they're doing all they can to fight us publishing, and we're doing all we can to fight back. The final thing I want to talk about is we launched a new campaign this year called End Dairy Slaughter. So this is a campaign about the dairy industry. So we launched it with a brand new video about the dairy industry, which you can find on our website. And that featured footage we've captured over the last year of calf separation and the slaughter of dairy calves and mother cows. So a lot of the times we talk about the horrors of the dairy industry and we talk about bobby calves. Something that we felt was lacking was new footage of the slaughter of spent dairy cows. So these are the mother cows who are killed at between 4 and 7 years old. So they're still young. So we captured that at 2 Victorian slaughterhouses, Wangaratta and Ralph's Meats, and that formed a big part of that campaign. So we've got a new playlist on our website, Everything You Need to Know About Dairy, which is a little riff off Dairy Australia's own video, which is sent out around schools across the country, everything you need to know about the dairy industry. And in that we have videos about calf separation, bobby calf slaughter, the life of a dairy cow, as well as the life of bobby calves who aren't killed within a week of birth. So these are cows who are raised for what's known as dairy beef. And we talk about the correlation that's been found with strong beef prices and decreased bobby calf slaughter. Because a lot of people will think, oh, that's a good thing that these calves aren't being killed, but really they're just being raised for an extra 11 months and then killed for beef. So we have done a couple of outreach events for this campaign as well, including a Mother's Day action outside the Hotel Windsor, where we hosted like a little counter high tea. They were holding their high tea inside, and we had our high tea outside, talking to people about the dairy industry and encouraging them to choose dairy-free on Mother's Day. So I'll wrap up there. So the big thing we're asking people at the moment, and again, I want to thank, I'm sure there's people on this call, but just so many people in the community have been incredibly generous helping us fight this court order. It's, as many of you know, going to court is not fun, and we're currently crowdfunding to cover our legal costs. We have decided to fight this because we believe that it's a really important case. And we know that if we don't fight this in court, then it will just give an opening for other slaughterhouses, for other farms to take on activists and try to block them from publishing this footage. So we want to fight it now, and we want to win. So yeah, any support, if people are unable to support, we totally understand. We really ask people to share the crowdfunder, as well as just by sharing our footage and sharing our content as well. So we know that we don't expect our audience, we don't want our audience to be everyone here who already knows how horrible these industries are. I know that a lot of people can't or don't want to watch footage anymore. We totally understand. But what we want is for our footage to reach as many people who haven't seen it as possible. So every person who shares what we create, every person who sends it to 5 friends, are helping us with our goal. And our ultimate aspiration is that our footage, our website, our map, everything, our 360 tours, everything that we do can be used by all of you to help reach more people and just force transparency on this industry. So I'll finish up there. Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry for going over time, but yes, really appreciate you having me, and lovely to see you all as always.
Harley, that was just phenomenal. Thank you. And it's just literally gobsmacking what you've done it's only halfway through this year. It's just extraordinary. And I think I can speak for everyone for wanting to thank you and Chris and all at Farm Transparency Project for just being so brave and audacious and willing to risk your lives and liberty, and for shining a light on all of these appalling industries, and we we will be following your court cases avidly, of course, and whatever we can do, but just yeah, and happy 10th anniversary. What you've done in a decade is, yeah, mind-boggling. So
that definitely needs to go to Chris. He's been driving it since the start. I'm a relatively new.
Well, you've done a lot in the short time that you've been part of it. But yes, obviously kudos to Chris for just, well, I mean, I think he stands on Mount Everest as far as activism in the world, actually, quite frankly. He's just the most formidable activist. So thanks again. Our